Chapter 2, The Program. When high school started, me and the other kids who hadn't fit into the regular curriculum were thrown into something called The Program. Designed for outcasts, screwballs, and kids with mild learning disabilities, we were all grouped together like some sort of virus the school system needed to quarantine. While safely registered in high-level classes that their parents, counselors, and coaches had chosen, the preppy elites were nowhere to be seen. If I really wanted to go looking for them, I had to cross into the kingdom of trophy cases and school banners, where classrooms sequestered the royalty who laughed at their teachers' dry jokes. But back in the corners of the high school where the metal chicks skipped class, where the restrooms reeked of cigarette smoke and graffiti colored the stalls, the program stumbled on. Here is where 6-foot-tall, 300-pound special young ladies with hairy arms and combat boots wove the halls with mullet-headed burnouts and flannel shirts and ripped bleached jeans. Resource Study Group was my second period class of the day and met in a room where the retarded kids usually were there for periods 3 through 6. The alphabet bordered the ceiling and numerals hung on the wall. The goal of Resource was to get help with our homework, but Mr. Allen began by giving us only 2 rules. You can't sleep or talk to each other. Mr. Allen had a sad look to his tired eyes and seemed like he'd given up on teaching long ago. There were 4 of us, each isolated at our own circular table. 2 sorta slow kids and a big shiesty Latino dude, and me. Everyone began reading except Flip, who didn't bring any books and sat looking around the room with a big grin on his face. At the sound of the bell, Flip went to work on Mr. Allen until the balding man threw down his pen. Back in my day, do you have any idea what our principal did to correct problem students? To give you a hint, it involved a wooden plank. What? Flip grinned. How did he do that? It's true, Allen nodded. The principal was allowed to discipline the troublemakers by spanking them, but I'll tell you one thing. Mr. Allen held up his finger. Not too many kids step out of line. You hear this? Flip asked. This perv used to spank kids with a wooden plank. Mr. Allen's left eye began to twitch, and then he began to stutter as he tried to get his words out. No, Flip, I never hit any of the kids with the plank. I said the principal had that job. You know, you sound just like Porky Pig sometimes.
That's all, folks.
Flip threw back his head and laughed as Allen's eyes dropped back into his book, and for a time, Flip was forced into picking on the others instead. Ben, how you been, man? How was your summer? You know, I forgot just how big that head was of yours. Damn, maybe it grew. You must look at yourself in the mirror sometimes and say, damn, I got a big fucking head. Flip! Shouted Allen. What? I'm just being honest. And while we're on the subject, Ben, you really should clean out your ears once in a while, because you got like cheese dripping out of those things. Flip made a twirling gesture by his ear. You should go to work with a Q-tip sometime and really dig those suckers out one day, and I bet even you'd be surprised at what you'll find. Flip glanced at Allen, who rolled his eyes and went back to his papers. You know, Ben, it's really disgusting to look at your earwax. You really are one nasty Flip! Mr. Allen raised his voice. What? Flip asked, raising both of his palms innocently. I'm only trying to help the kid with his hygiene. You must admit that's very important. I couldn't help smiling, which Mr. Allen zoned right in on. If you think that's funny, you go and visit Flip in about 10 years from now. Then you'll see something really funny. Yeah, okay, Allen, Flip smiled crookedly. And while we're on the subject of jokes, if you really want to get a good laugh, you could ask Allen about all the spacemen he knows. Isn't that right, Allen? What? I asked, smiling, as Allen's right eye started to shudder, 100 blinks a minute. Oh, I didn't tell you. Flip slapped his thigh and slid back his plastic chair. Mr. Allen is famous. My older brother told me all about him. Allen is always calling the newspapers, telling them how he sees space aliens driving UFOs around his house, beaming him up to the mothership and taking him for spins around the solar system. Isn't that right, Allen? Mr. Allen, he corrected. Yeah, Professor Allen over there is always in the National Enquirer talking about moonmen landing and making first contact. Then the school got an anonymous tip from somebody, and they called him down to the office to find out, if he had all his shit together. You want to know something else, Allen? Enough, Flip. You want to get kicked out of here the first week of school? No, really, all jokes aside, I'm being 100% completely serious right now. Okay, Mr. Allen? I need to tell you something really important. Now, this is a true story. I was in the mall the other day, sitting in the food court, getting something to eat, and you know how they have that glass ceiling? Flip began. Yeah, said Allen. Well, I just happened to look up, and I saw this huge floating spaceship, and written on the side of it, in huge letters, was Allen Incorporated. Flip, I'm giving you this one last chance to shut your mouth. Hey, Ben, did you go yet? Flip turns attention toward Ben. Psst, Kelly. Yo, Kelly, peep this. Did you know that Ben got caught jerking off in the middle of history class? So they dumped him in the mastery program and gave him a permanent pass to the nurse's office to, take care of his business in private if he ever gets the urge to smack his unit around a bit. Flip, this is your last warning. Allen glared and Flip nodded his head and straightened up, waiting for Allen to get caught up in his book again before leaning forward. Hey, Ben, Flip gleamed, turning so red it looked like he was about to sprout horns. Ben, you go down there yet? You use your pass to the nurse? Not another word, Flip. Allen looked up from his papers, but Flip ignored him. How many times have you skipped on down there today, bro? Flip, one more word and you're out of here, Allen shouted, his voice echoing into the hall. Hey, Ben, does the nurse ever join in the fun and give you a hand when you go down there? At least tickle your balls or something? Then Flip stuck out his tongue and acted like he was jerking off with both hands. Flip, get the hell out of here. Allen stood up, knocking his chair over with a loud crash as Flip ran out into the hall. Mr. Allen started to chase him down but changed his mind and moped back in. Period 3, Science. I strolled in and saw 4 skaters glaring at me with laser beam eyes, wearing t-shirts advertising independent trucks, element boards, sludge wheels, project bearings. They hunched together in the back of the room as our science teacher scrawled his name, Mr. Ryan, in capital letters on the chalkboard, and then turned around staring through Coke bottle glasses, eyeballs ping-ponging at us. He was bald with a thick salt and pepper beard, yellowed around his lips, with his front row of teeth jutting forward as though they were being squeezed out of his mouth. Oh, no you don't, he waved his short arms in the air. You guys in the back of the room, I want all of you split up and sitting up here at the front. You there, you over here, and you, up front in these 2 desks. The skaters grumbled as they got up. What's this dude's problem anyway? We didn't even do nothing yet. A huge pale kid complained. He had short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. What's your name? Mr. Ryan asked him. Jonah. Jonah, I want you sitting right there behind him. Mr. Ryan pointed at me. Jonah dropped into the desk behind me, knocking my chair. Who's the new kid? Jonah shoved me again. Turn around, bitch. Mr. Ryan grimaced. As some of you may be able to read, my name is Mr. Ryan. I'm new to this school system, but I am not new to teaching. Let me assure you, I've seen everything. I know your types and I won't hesitate to kick anyone out of my class who interrupts others who want to learn. We want to learn, a kid with bleach spikes announced. Shut up, Ezra, said Jonah. What? I'm totally serious. Mr. Ryan twisted his lips. Yeah, we'll see. The first major fight of the school year happened during the second week. The system that had always separated these 2 students mistakenly placed Sonny from the mastery program next to Nate from the honors classes in the same study hall. It was the first time they'd seen each other since the 5th grade. The 2 began arguing, and by lunch that day they were squaring up behind the school. Nate, a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound lurking jock, smugly wearing his football jersey, stared at everyone with a look on his face like he just smelled a fart. Yet at 5 feet tall and 100 pounds, Sonny had charisma. He was a tough, ugly little son of a bitch who was a skater, but looked more like some 1950s greaser with Elvis Presley sideburns. Sonny's face was covered with a bubbly layer of acne, and his small but muscle-bound arms were covered with webs of thick blue veins. Ropey scars shined on his legs, boasting old injuries from falling off skateboards. Nate stood, staring down at Sonny, as if he were better than most kids, especially Sonny or anyone else in the mastery program. Nate seemed more than happy to make an example out of Sonny, though only half his size. The jock stood on one side and the skaters on the other, both cheering for their boy. The skaters groaned when Nate threw the first punch, hitting Sonny squarely on the chest and knocking him back. Sonny grimaced and danced back in, swinging and trying to get close enough to return some punishment, but Nate used his longer reach to keep the fight cheap and pounded jabs down on Sonny's face from a distance. Sonny tried to swing back, but couldn't get close enough to reach the larger boy, and Nate went on to pummel Sonny for another 30 seconds. "It's alright, Sonny, you still got this." Jonah tried to talk him through it. "That kid is so dead," someone growled. "Shut up or it's gonna be me and you next." When Sonny looked dazed enough, Nate saw his chance and shot forward, picked the smaller guy up and tried to toss him over a short fence that ran along the edge of a 12-foot drop onto a maintenance driveway below. With his body hanging halfway over the fence, Sonny hooked a leg on each side and squeezed them together to keep himself from being shoved over the embankment. Nate gritted his teeth and pushed upward, straining to end the fight by dropping the kid onto the cement below. But Sonny wasn't about to let go. Nate glared up and then took a step forward, trying to wedge his body completely under Sonny, but as he changed his footing, he slipped, falling to one knee. That was all Sonny needed. He pushed his body straight up and hopped to the ground like a gymnast. Quickly, Sonny fought his way onto the inside, moving his arms like two lightning-fast cobras on the strike. When he got close enough, he began to hop. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Sonny threw lefts and rights and landed 60 punches in 30 seconds. Nate was stunned. He thrashed about like a stupefied Frankenstein, no longer protecting himself, but throwing punches in slow motion, compared to his tiny opponent. The skaters went crazy as the jocks faded back. Sonny went every time he threw a flurry of punches. That was all we could hear besides the dull slaps to Nate's face, which was beginning to puff up with red welts. Eventually knocked senseless, he held his arms down by his side as Sonny pounced up and down, hissing and punching the bigger guy's head like it was a speed bag. The preps who gathered for the show began to yell at Nate. "Come on, Nate, you lazy fuck, get back in there. Don't go out like that," shouted his jock buddies. Nate was making them look bad. They booed while the skaters cheered, but then a stoned-out cretin ran over and stood between them. The hippie pointed at Nate. "Are you done?" Nate nodded his head and Sonny raised his fist triumphantly as our cheers rang out. But the majority of the school didn't like seeing a jock in a football jersey getting his ass kicked by a skater. "How did that happen? You're 10 times the size of him," the jocks complained, and turned their backs to him when Nate slumped over speechless. Meanwhile, the skaters grabbed Sonny and congratulated him while Jonah tried to pick him up. "We thought you were in trouble for a minute there," Jonah smiled. "I thought I was going to have to jump in." "Yeah, I was wondering when you're going to stop fucking around and kick his ass for real," said Ezra. "Watch this." Sonny walked over to Nate and admired the damage he'd caused. Nate's lips puffed out and his left eye was half closed. "Now you watch what you say about me or whatever class I'm in."